Hello and welcome to another episode of Farcast, this time a mini episode, the science fiction and fantasy themed podcast. I'm your host Ian, and joining me tonight are one interesting individual from across the internet. Uh,
Yes.
Natsur Springfield, otherwise known as the Almighty Dennis with two N's. Um, so I figured at the core of many, if not all, popular fantasy and science fiction settings is a game of one variety or another. Usually it spawns the setting, but sometimes it comes second. We're going to be talking about more what has led to the creation of some of our favorite fictional settings. For example, my favorite topic of the channel, Mech Warrior, is itself based on the tabletop game BattleTech. And I thought it would be interesting to go back to the root of some of our favorite fictional settings here and talk about the tabletop games themselves. Uh, and you are yourself a tabletop game designer, are you not?
Yep. Yeah. I haven't. Of course, I'm not a professional who has put out anything official, but I have been doing it as a hobby for the past. Each time I have to think about that number, I just
5 years, I think you said last time, unless it's been a year.
5 years. I think maybe a bit longer.
We'll go with five. Three is right
Yeah.
out.
Yep.
So, what is it you wanted us to begin with, since you're the tabletop expert here?
Oh God, you put me on the spot here.
Yes, yes, I am. Feel the spotlight. It burns, doesn't it?
Ah! I haven't felt this since I was at a theater. Okay. Giving long pauses to making an edit out, but
I'm just gonna be lazy and have everyone bask in the silence.
yes.
Why don't we begin with something like rule sets? Let's say, for example, one of the oldest tabletop games, you want to call it that, is chess, which has very strict rules uh, that allows for players to operate within a small arena, but still allows for a variety of moves that determine a very interesting experience. But on the other hand, we have something like Dungeons and Dragons, which is very popular these days, and it's essentially limited only by your imagination. And that's some pretty extreme contrast there.
Yeah, also it also goes to show the fact that these more freeform tabletop RPGs are getting more and more popular. The further forward in time we go, is also quite interesting as well. But I guess first off, chess. Yes, I was one of those people who was in uh, a few chess clubs before, though my I've never won a tournament. I have managed to take home the prize for the quickest game in a tournament, which
Nice.
is when I managed to pull off a two-move checkmate on one of my opponents.
That's very
And
impressive.
yes,
Do you remember what particular moves you did, since there were only two of them?
shit, I think one had to do with the pawn and the other with the knight, was it? Or no, it was the queen.
Ah,
Okay.
okay. Yeah, I can see that.
So chess is very mechanical, very harshly so, where yes, it is way more structured and actually way more geared towards people who just want to or to casually play games. So any given board game or a game like chess, where even though there is strategy involved, e- just about anyone can play it without having to sit them down and introduce them to the mere concept, because the objective of the game is actually set in stone. Put the king in an unwinnable state.
Hmm.
And no, not capture the king. All you I know there's just a ton of goddamn people out there who keep trying to do that. That's not how it works.
It's satisfying though. I like to capture the king just because
Yeah.
it's fun. It feels like you're killing the big bad guy.
But yes, if you don't declare checkmate, then yeah.
I usually declare checkmate and then take him anyways because fuck him.
Yeah. Fuck 'em. But then you go to something like a tabletop game where there is significantly more mechanics tied to a single unit, and then significantly more players than your typical tabletop game. Uh, and something where the goal is a little more open ended, and it is more the job of one person to make the adventure there interesting and continue to provide entertainment while the players do include things themselves. So normal tabletop games don't have that type of back and forth.
Yeah, it's more about the journey in something like D&D than it is in chess, which is entirely about how you reach that particular destination. Many D&D games simply don't have a conclusion necessarily.
Yeah, the conclusion is oftentimes not even that thoroughly thought out by any given DM, except and is usually only thought about once the characters reach the max level, or once the players have finally frustrated the dungeon master enough to make all the rocks fall and everyone to get killed.
And of course, 15 years have passed because no one can get together and actually play the session consistently.
Yep.
So I'm sure
Which
along the way to D&D, between chess and D&D, there's somewhat of a middle ground. Do you know any examples that has both imagination and some form of rule set?
this is a bit of a cop out answer, but a lot of video games tend to fall into that category. Most Western RPGs, where the goal is usually pretty well defined, but by necessity. But the entire game is structured, but the players have enough agency to basically do whatever they want within the parameters listed out by any programmer.
I guess the most flexible might be something like Elder Scrolls or Fallout, where the player can do whatever they want, but at the end of the day, they still have to eventually, uh, you know,
Yeah,
free the realm from whatever, kill the big bad guy.
pretty much.
We've talked a little bit about tabletop games in general. What's a tabletop game you've worked on in the past or are currently working on?
There are two games I'm currently working on. One is significantly more complex than the other. I'm currently working on a high fantasy uh, high fantasy game called Astalon, which is sort of set in a I don't actually know the name of this, but the types of apocalypses that the types of apocalypses that just reset everything down, but like back to something like the medieval era. But
Ah, yeah, yeah. I'm sure there's a particular term for it, but
yeah,
setting people back to the Stone Age, basically.
yeah, it's one of those types of settings where most where yeah, there is swords and sorcery, but there is a just a lot of ancient technology that has yet to be uncovered.
So,
And
did the
then
sorcery exist before the apocalypse?
no,
Oh,
actually, the defining event reintroduced magic.
hmm. But you say reintroduced magic. Was there an ancient,
Yes,
ancienter period where there was once magic?
of course.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. And I'm curious about the name Astalon. Where'd you get that from? Is it just a made-up word, or is it a hybrid
uh,
of other terms?
I believe it is a corruption of a different um, Greek god, or it might have been a Gundam.
Oh, all right. Greek god or Gundam. Um, yeah, it sort of sounds like Ether. Uh,
Yeah, I do believe it is. It does have to do with that sort of magical force. I believe was man. It's been 6 years since I coined the term, so um,
fair give You
hang
know,
on. I think I named one of my boats in Guns of Icarus. The actual spelling. Give me 10 minutes to reinstall
oh no.
it. I don't believe we have time for that though. But
Oh darn.
so my other game that I'm more actively currently working on is called The Lost, which is a mixture of gothic horror and cosmic horror.
Well, I'm sure you'll write it a lot better than Lost.
Yes.
Yeah, nobody liked Lost. That was just a rambling cascade of dumb things and
Oh
open-ended
yes.
mysteries, which nobody liked and never got paid off.
Yep. And it made everyone lose the game
Ah,
consistently every time.
pure evil. So, what's your particular Lost setting about, or the Lost?
So in short, The Lost is is a supernatural detective agency s- that have been commissioned by the Crown to help snuff out supernatural threats and perhaps uh, perhaps learn from them. But
So, it's basically violent Ghostbusters in a way.
very violent Ghostbusters, yes.
So, what sort of tools do these hunters use? Do they have a particular title or anything like that?
uh, I typically, uh, I just call them agents.
Okay, fair enough.
And yes, the typical tool of trade back during 1885 is gun. So, um, most of them use gun.
Do they have particular types of weapons? Is it like bolt action? Do they use revolvers, or do they have like semi-automatic?
so, so typically back during that era, there's really only three types of guns really widely used at the time, which were the pistol, the shotgun, and the carbine or carbine rifles. Or no, wait, shit. Pistol, shotgun, rifle. But popular back then were around that time. The Colt Peacemaker was a really popular gun that had just came out.
So no Gatling guns.
Yeah, Gatling guns. Yeah, no Gatling guns.
Darn it! What's the point?
Yeah, sorry, you're gonna have to wait 30 years until you can Gatling gun down a werewolf. Which incidentally is why werewolves went extinct. Sorry, guys. Um,
That's got to be some really expensive Gatling guns if you fire 500 silver bullets every second.
yes, I do believe the conversion is $400,000 to fire that thing for 12 seconds.
So
So
what
yeah,
sort of
this is
supernatural things do you fight?
werewolves, ghosts. I did have a more traditional version of a druid at one point who basically just kept yeah, a more traditional version of a druid who was in cahoots with a bunch of Wendigo.
Hmm. So, and Wendigo, for those who don't know, is like a tall cannibal Native American type character with like a deer skull for a head, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or I think the deer skull is actually a from what I gathered, the deer skull is originally a hat that eventually fuses to their face.
Ah, okay.
or that might have just been somebody's interpretation, but
Yeah, I think SCP Foundation did something like that with the skull helmet idea.
yeah. Unfortunately, I've only played Containment Breach and Secret Laboratory, so that's the extent of my knowledge about the SCPs.
Ah, fair enough. I enjoy listening to certain audio documentaries about it. It's actually part of what's really inspired me to do my lab videos.
Okay, that makes sense. uh, though, yeah, I mean, though for that type of game, what it would be perfectly possible to use a random number generator to pick out something from their wiki.
Oh yeah, that's very true.
um, but yeah, I guess so. I guess really the only reason I started making the Lost is I just had a lot of developmental issues with Astalon because I designed a RPG system that was just overly complicated, and even though I simplified it by using Roll20's, or for any of you not aware, Roll20 is an online tabletop gaming platform that um, allows you to play play tabletop games around the world with people, but it also comes with a development tool that allows you to use HTML to program your own character sheets, and it will also do things like do the math for you. So I abused that function as far as I could take it in order to simplify Astalon as far as it could be taken because it was doing things. It was doing like rolling addition, some multiplication at some points, and I eventually realized once a level 5 character was putting out 100 damage somehow that okay, this will get rapidly out of hand if I keep letting this escalation issue keep happening. I'm gonna go back to the basics and try to make a system that uses as small of numbers as possible. So if I'm doing a more than 2 digits worth of damage before, let's say, level 10, I am going to declare it as having done it wrong and go back to the drawing board. So for the Lost, I restricted everything down. I got so I realized not all dice needs to be just 1 through 6 or 1 through 20 or whatever. So I programmed a custom dice that was -1 0 0 1 1 2.
Oh, that's interesting. So instead of you know, going through a simple range of one to a number, it's essentially a set of values.
Yep.
Yeah, it sounds
Uh,
pretty clever if simple.
yeah, which, unlike Astalon, the Lost could be theoretically played on an actual table, provided I actually make the dice for it.
You should just take
I should.
however many sides you need, a D5, D7, whatever, and just paint over it and
Yeah.
put your numbers on the
I
side.
need to retrieve my paints from storage. But yeah.
So,
Um,
you have plenty of experience with tabletop gaming, but you're also someone who's making video games as well. Could you tell us about that?
so I haven't made any complete video game projects yet, but largely, yeah, I went to Mount Hood Community College in order to take their video game development degree and graduated uh, like 1 year ago. a little over a year ago. But basically, um, I have mostly applied that knowledge to these HTML games, but I have also made rail shooters in Unity. Um, one of which is I, I originally called it Starstorm, but I am starting to rethink the theming for it. But it is a bullet hell rail shooter in the vein of Toho Project.
Is Star Fox also a rail shooter?
Yes.
All right.
Star Fox, House of the Dead. Trying
Yeah,
to think of some other
Star
ones.
Fox is the only one I'm familiar with because I figured that would be a more direct comparison. And
Yeah,
if I'm
that's a more direct comparison, but
yeah,
Ian here did make me some models for the earlier prototypes.
yeah, I think I made a couple spaceships and like a basic turret design and some terrain or something.
Not terrain, but spaceships and turrets.
Yeah, that was it. I've done so
Uh,
many projects over the years; it's easy to lose track.
yeah. Um, yeah, and I just recently discovered there is a plugin that is basically just an invisible railroad track. So now I can actually get modeled out terrain to fly around.
Oh, that sounds pretty handy actually, since I know terrain and motion paths can be kind of a pain in the butt.
Oh yeah.
So we've talked about a bit about the origins of this stuff and what you're currently working on. So what do you think the future of gaming, tabletop or otherwise, is going to be like?
um. So right now there's really only, I guess, four major tabletop games. Them being Dungeons and Dragons, Warhammer, Call of Cthulhu, and shit, I had a fourth one there. Um,
Ah, well, it's not that important.
yeah.
Uh,
So recently, within the past like 2 to 3 years, tabletop gaming has sort of become a spectator, a spec, it a spectator activity for a bunch of YouTubers. So you have shows like Critical Role and whatever Team Four Star is doing right now, and Warhams that currently just started. Um, I'm
oh,
thinking a lot of the ways those shows are playing the games are going to inevitably and in some cases already have affect their source material when say we finally get to D&D 6th edition and whatnot.
yeah, that'd be interesting. I wasn't aware of Team Four Star doing that. I love their stuff, but I haven't checked them out in a while, so maybe I'll swing on by and see what they're up to.
I'll get ready for 20 several hour episodes. Time to get started.
Oh, nothing wrong with that. Sometimes it's better to have a lot of content to go through. So
Yep.
it sucks when you find something you really enjoy, but there's only an hour of content. It's just like, no, I want more. I
Yeah.
almost wish I never had discovered this because now I'm craving something that doesn't exist.
Yep.
So, what are you going to do in the future? Or what's your goal?
So current goal is for Astalon. Eventually intend on releasing a free public rule book and monster manual for that, along with one of the campaigns I made for it, specifically for it. And then the Lost, I'm probably gonna keep that private, given most of it is it's mostly experimental.
Fair enough.
And
You got to start somewhere, and you got to have a little test arena to figure out what works and what doesn't.
Yep. And then I might. Uh, it is a pipe dream to turn a salon into a video game, but that is a while off.
Hey, you never know. If you start now, you might figure something out.
Yep. And I guess also I have voiced the possibility of doing this in the past, but I might run a run a some tabletop games for the folks at Farcier Animation Discord.
You should. I was actually going to suggest that you've definitely run some interesting games in the past. We've played, shit, might have been 7 years ago. I don't know.
Oh God.
We did a little bit of tabletop gaming over the internet, and it was a complete and total disaster. We tried to do
Oh yes.
basically a feudal type thing, basically go slay the dragon type stuff, but we kept changing
Yeah.
who the DM
It,
was, and it was a mess.
that mess was what inspired me to start writing rules, which is why I'm here right now.
Yeah, yeah, there were definitely some very interesting liberties taken with everyone's personal character of choice and just complete clashing of ideas between everyone. It's good that
I
everyone uses their imagination, but having someone to sort of wrangle that particular herd of cats is a good idea.
Yeah, I think we should have probably immediately stopped as soon as one of our players tried to play a clone of Artorias of the Abyss in feudal Japan. And I mean, yes, still in night gear.
And Artorias of the Abyss is a Dark Souls character, which is like a big hulking, I don't know, sort of like a bird's beak helmet or something weird like that. It's got a very unusual shape, but he just
Yeah,
doesn't fit in the setting.
definitely.
Plus, we can't forget the American cowboy that existed before America existed.
Yep.
And there was no
uh,
time travel involved, just a poor understanding of history.
yep. Do your research if you're going to do anything historical.
Yeah.
I just suddenly know way more about guns available in the 1880s now than I did a few months ago because I don't want anyone to be pulling out a minigun on me.
Yeah, plus you always want to avoid the well, actually crowd, and
Oh
because that
yeah.
can be a
Oh
giant pain
God.
in the butt. It's like, yeah, I know, I know.
I know. Please. I didn't plan for this, but I'm still going.
Yeah. Oh well, it's a fantasy setting, so you can sort of, stretch certain things. Just don't go overboard. Alrighty. Well, as for if we do a tabletop game for the channel, we should definitely think about what type of tabletop game we want to do. Is it going to be science fiction, fantasy, a hybrid, something else?
I could do both.
That
I could do science fiction, fantasy, and Lovecraftian horror if I decide to go learn Warhammer.
It's going to be tricky. It's always hard to mix your swords and your lasers and get something that isn't a muddled mess. But I'm sure, if
Yeah,
we restrict either one portion or the other, it could be interesting. Like basically, Star Wars is almost all science fiction with a little bit of sprinkling of fantasy elements,
yeah,
and 90% World War II.
yeah.
So one part doesn't totally get muddled with the other. Uh,
uh,
so that'll be interesting.
on the opposite end of the spectrum, could do something Zelda-like, where it's 90% fantasy, 10% technology. So
I,
yeah,
yeah, I still haven't played any Zelda games, but I'm familiar enough with the setting to, get a
yep.
concept going in my head. All right, well, I think
Well, I
that's.
guess that is something I'm also gonna need to fix on Farseer Gaming.
Oh, God. Yeah, we'll definitely have to. Well, thank you guys for joining us. I think that sort of wraps up our particular discussion since we're just kind of futzing around with, our particular hobbies. So if you
Yep.
have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments. Make any suggestions onto what type of tabletop gaming you think we should do. And if you want to join our discussions, drop by the Discord. And if you have something interesting to talk about, we'll let you join.
Yep.
Um, yeah. Thank you for watching. Please, I don't know what should we say? Cast magic
Like,
missile on.
favorite, subscribe, and follow my Twitter, please. At Not Serious Spring.
Oh God. Uh, Yeah, go check out his Twitter and cast Magic Missile on the like button or whatever.
Yep.
And subscribe if you want to hear us, or maybe you don't want to hear us, but you also hate yourself and you want to hear us drone on in your ear and make yourself miserable. Either works.